Hello, and welcome to another interview for Nurture Squared. My name is Heather Boyd, and I am excited to share with you an interview that I did quite some time ago with Tarzan K. She is a phenomenal email copy strategist and teacher who has supported many entrepreneurs in creating email copy that gets high open rates, that engages people, and that leads to more connections for supporting people in the trade that you are working in. It's been a while since this interview was conducted, which is why I'm doing this introduction. We had some tech difficulties and the video ended up only being audio. So for the next half hour, sit back and enjoy the listen as Tarzan and I explore a number of issues, from money mindset to personality to the wide variety of backgrounds that you can have before finally landing on your niche. So enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Hi, it's Heather Boyd from Nurture Squared, and today I have the pleasure of getting to talk with Tarzan as a launch strategist, copywriter, and educator. She specializes in fun to read and more addictive than Game of Thrones course launch copy. She helps freelancers and service providers to package up their magic and turn it into products that sell. So she has an interesting history too, and I think it's worth pointing out because a lot of us have come from different areas before landing on our feet as entrepreneurs. Tarzan used to be a music major and used to be a law student. So you have quite a varied background, but you've ended up here.
Oh yeah, I've taken a very circuitous route to get where I am today. But it's interesting because now I can trace back why each of those steps was really important to get where I am. Actually, I did sort of need to do that stint in law school just to knock that off my list of something I thought maybe would be good to do. And it was a time consuming and expensive lesson, but it had to be done.
It had to be done. And yeah, as you say, all those pieces fit into where you end up here, even if you don't get it at the time. Yeah. So I wonder, there's a lot that I want to talk to you about today, but I know that, I've been following you for a while and have been sitting in on some of your webinars. And I think one of the biggest things that I want to ask you about, because I think it is one of the biggest barriers for entrepreneurs, especially healthcare professionals, is the M word, money.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about money and mindset around money.
Oh, yeah. This is everything with business. Oh my God. It's been such this conversation is always evolving. At every stage of my career, I bump up against new things that I need to deal with. But really digging into my attitudes about money and what I'm willing to charge and what my work is worth, and what compared to what other people charge, that has been some of the most important work that I have ever done. And for people that are in healing professions, it is particularly important because there is a very pervasive cultural belief that you shouldn't charge for that type of work, or that it should be free, or that if you charge a lot of money for it, you're excluding certain people. There is so much wrapped up in this, and we all have we have different ways of dealing with it or not dealing with it at all, in which case it's really difficult to run a business.
Absolutely. Well, I keep thinking back to the basic premise that we can't change the world with what we do if we don't actually make a good run at making money to keep it sustainable.
Yeah, precisely. So when you're in business, when I was starting out, I thought, oh, I'm charging $35 an hour. I was comparing that to what I would be making in a job, which at the time would have been $10. So I thought, well, $35 is well, that's triple. So that should be pretty good. But I quickly realized as I started to grow my business, I'm in the online space where all service providers are exorbitantly expensive. It's wild, the rates that are out there, because also there's a corresponding amount of opportunity. So I quickly realized in order to get the training that I needed and to get the support, support people who would support my business, and also people who could coach me and get me to the next level. Like, and also just, let's be real, like just to support my family, like $35 an hour was never going to cut it. And in fact, $50 an hour wasn't going to cut it. $100 an hour wasn't going to cut it. And that's like, whoa, that's a lot to take in. It's like, even if I triple my rates, it's still not enough to support my family and to grow my business in the direction I want to go. So man, I really had to take a hard look at that, and also think about designing services and offering my services in such a way that I would be able to keep running my business and do the things and buy nice things and drink lattes. And also, like, the client would get what they needed, and it would make sense for them to pay this price. Because I never want someone to come to me and pay me and, like, you know, be like putting $1,000 charge on their credit card for an hour of my time and then walk away feeling like, okay, that was fun, but like I just spent $1,000. Like, so we do have a responsibility to our clients and customers, of course, like, to make sure we're offering our services in such a way that it's going to be worth it for them. But I think mostly, like, we spend a lot more time worrying about, like, what are people going to think? Like, oh, but other people are doing the same thing. Like, I started out as a copywriter, and I have transitioned out of working as a copywriter, but it's very typical for a copywriter to offer their services at like $25 or $30 an hour. And here I am charging like over $1,000. Like, you have to really take a hard look at, like, what are you offering and how are you making it worth that person's money?
Right. Well, when I think about how many of us who are healthcare providers have ended up as entrepreneurs, we usually, for most of us here, we've worked for a decade, oftentimes almost 2 decades. So the expertise is there, and it's just the learning curve is around money mindset and reaching out to people in a totally different way than in a institution or public sector. Yeah. And but one of the things, and I'm jumping around here, but I decided to start with money because it's the big doozy. It's the M word that we all, no matter, most of us struggle with so much that I thought I was going to either go big or go home with you today, Tarzan. So now that M word is out, one of the things I wanted people to tap into today, because I've been getting your emails and enjoying your materials, is you have a bit of a, you're a fan of Game of Thrones, and you're also a fan of understanding different personality types and how that impacts how you communicate to figure out what kind of personality I was and how that impacts what I like to read. I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit about the importance of understanding who you're talking to.
So yeah, this is really important, and there's lots of different systems available for understanding personality types, and it can serve you at all levels of your business. So I really love this system called DISC. It's a personality assessment, and you can liken the 4 types to like Game of Thrones characters or Friends or whatever. But the DISC assessment, like, I'm in the process of hiring a full-time employee right now. We had everyone take the DISC assessment because I know the characteristics that I'm looking for in an employee, what's going to be like a good match, and what's going to, like, what type of skills or aptitude they need to excel in this role. But you can also use it as a communication tool. And this was how I was first introduced to this system. So as an example, I like to use Game of Thrones characters. Now Game of Thrones is like retired. It feels a little bit out of date. We can use all sorts of characters though. So like, I send a lot of email in my business, and I encourage people to send a lot of email, and it freaks people out. And one of the things I say is like, okay, so not everyone is reading all of your emails. And just know that, like, some of your emails will apply to some people, will appeal to some people, and some will not. And you want to make sure that you're hitting these 4 basic types. So there's the reds. I am a red myself. The reds are very direct. They just know what they want, and they want it right away. Like, I don't even read emails. I just need you to, like, give me the link to the thing. I really struggle to, like, sit down and read through line by line. I'm super decisive though. So if you just hit me the link, like, get me the link, I'll go and sign up for your thing. So that's the reds. They like emails that are really short, direct, to the point, and you got to send those occasionally. That's the smallest percentage of people though. There's the yellows. The yellows have like a high value in like social time, being around people. They value fun. The yellows are like your friend that's always late to the party, but nobody cares. Like, we all forgive her because she's so much fun. You probably have a friend like that. Maybe you are that person. That's the yellow. So those emails, like in order to appeal to the yellow, and this doesn't have to just be email. You can, this could apply to your social media or the way you interact online, whatever. Those sorts of people, like they really like funny GIFs or like funny jokes, like anything, any elements, like pictures, anything that make it really interesting, make it a good time. That's the yellows. Then there's the blues. The blues are like very emotionally motivated. They like really heartfelt stories. Like those people, you share the stories for them, but also like you have to be open and vulnerable to really connect with them. They want to feel that you're real. They want you to feel something. Then there's the greens. The greens are very detail oriented. So for the greens, like I send longer emails that have all the details of whatever the thing is that I'm promoting. So they are the ones that are always going to, like, you, even though you have an FAQ, they come back and they ask more questions. Like they're really, like my business manager, Sandra, she's very high green, which I love because she's really deep in the details.
Cool. Neat. Well, and until I had gone through that with one of your emails, I hadn't really even given any thought to that whatsoever. But in terms of, your work with clients, what you're in effect doing is developing the email campaigns for them. And you're using these principles and drawing in other principles or strategies that you use to get clear communication. And if your communication is clear and you're communicating to various people, different personalities, then you're connecting with those people who will end up reaching out and taking on the services.
You got it.
That's it in a nutshell. And yet when it comes to clear communication, it's the nuance that counts, right? There's a reason that you're not charging $25 an hour.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that level of skill and that comfort with money and to know what you're worth too.
Yeah. So the thing is though, is a lot of people will say like, well, my skill level is not that high. I just started, and that's fine. Like when you're starting out, you do have to, like, you can't be the most expensive person on the market, but that doesn't mean you can't create an offer that has other elements that increase the value of it. So especially if you're in a market that's like traditionally kind of low cost, you have to think about like, well, what could I offer in addition to like just my hours? So for one thing, and for service providers, like for healers and coaches, like I do think this is really important to think about your services as a package so that people commit to you for the time that it takes to get the transformation. So, and like you can't get, like, it's very rare that you get a transformation in one session. So, and also it's not going to be financially very nourishing for you. So if you think about like perhaps a 90-day package, and during those 90 days, okay, there are X number of sessions, but you may give some sort of support between sessions, whether it's email support or phone support or whatever. Just like I have a voice messaging app that I use. So I would say to my clients, like, I'll be available on this app in between sessions so you can ask me questions. Another thing, and this is again different depending on your industry, but like I have certain things that I've already created that I can give away and cost nothing to me. So I also like to increase the value. I give away templates. If you're a healer, for perhaps there's something, perhaps you have like, a program or like, meal plans or an exercise plan or like something that you basically create once, but then you can share that with your private clients. You never, like, as long as you are attached, like people feel like they're buying your time, they're going to be really attached to the number. And they're going to compare you to this other person over here who's doing the exact same thing. But if you're the one that shows up with this comprehensive offer, yes, it costs more, but it includes all these other things. And then when they go to this person that's like, oh, it's $50 an hour, then they're like, well, did she do that? Does she do that? Is this included? Like, then they're not comparing based on the price. They're comparing based on what type of support that they need.
I think you must have been reading my mind over the struggles that I've had with my business lately, because you nailed it on the head when you said these transformations don't happen in one session. And yet, for many of us, the business model we have is one-on-one hourly sessions, solve a problem, and it feels fixed enough that we don't connect with them again. And yet, as you've said, the amount of effort that went into reaching out to that client, connecting with that client, booking that client, and seeing them, and then following up with any resources means that we're back down to that $10 an hour range.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. People always underestimate how much time they actually put into like running their business, connecting with clients, doing things like sending invoices, keeping up with your books, like all those things. I would say, I would just, as a benchmark, presume that at least a third of your time is going to be taken up just running your business. So in that case, like, you have a limited number of hours that you can actually bill, particularly if you're doing the type of work where you can't see a lot of clients in a day. Like some type of healing work especially is like really emotionally like and energetically demanding. You can't just be doing back-to-back clients all day long, banging them out. So we do have to get really radically real about how many billable hours you actually physically and emotionally, spiritually are able to work in a week, and then start to think about calculating your rates.
You know, again, you've touched on a point that hasn't come up often, and yet I think it weaves through for so many of us here, and that idea of just how intense 1 hour can be. I know with my clients that have chronic illness and are really ill, I get off that phone and I need a rest. Like, it is really worthwhile and valuable work for me, but it's also exhausting. And I hadn't really put it in the perspective of making sure that means that I cap my time in a way that respects what I can put into it and still have anything left at the end. So yeah, that self-care piece.
Yeah, precisely. Because if you don't have the time and the space to charge your own battery, you can't serve clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the other things that you brought up when you were talking about that is the added value piece. And I think that's something that for those of us who have come from public sector, those materials were always produced by a special department. They would stay static for 10 years, and then at some point someone would start revamping them and republish them. I'm realizing now how top heavy that process is in developing the resource. It takes a lot of time, but now that I've been in private practice for 1.5 years and I'm getting to, and I hadn't even planned this, but it fits right into that idea of adding value. I'm offering a course and then, oh yeah, there's that handout that I developed. And then there's this one and this one. And all of a sudden I feel like I've really given them something valuable, not just my direct time.
Yeah, as do they. I feel like there's something really special that you've created for them. Yeah, and it does take time to create those resources, but you only have to create it once. You never have to start from scratch again. You may develop it or find like it needs to be tweaked, but you are at it, when you're in the beginning stages of your business, often you have more time. You're not like full of client work. So that's something to really like, that can fill in the gaps when you're not just running back and forth serving clients, and probably you're wishing you had more clients, but that's a great time to create those resources that you will use again and again down the road.
Right. Yeah. Use the time when you have it, and then it's there for you to add value later. That's great. Mm-hmm. Great advice. I also wonder, you've talked about learning as you go and the idea of imperfection and that mistakes are going to be part of the process. What do you see as one of the common mistakes that entrepreneurs make in either building their business or in trying to connect with clients?
Good question. Common mistakes. So I think we've touched on a couple of common mistakes, but I do think this is particularly important for women, is that sometimes women can be a lot more risk averse than people of other genders. And we are like, it does hold us back, like risk in terms of like trying a new offer, trying out new pricing, you know, hiring that coach that you really need to get you to the next level, or taking that course that you need to learn how to do something that you want to do. It's really common. I know that my business has grown really, really fast because I have been able to push past that feeling of like being risk averse. I'm not as risk averse as some, although it still feels scary. Like, it doesn't mean it's not scary to take risks, because it's always scary. I'm hiring my first full-time employee. That's scary. But I'm doing it anyway. So being able to push past those fears is really, really important. And also knowing that you are going to fail at things. And honestly, like, failing doesn't feel good, of course. But most of when my business has seen like a big growth, like a big spike in growth, it's often been on the heels of what felt like a huge failure. Like, that's where I learned my most important lessons. The growth of a business, I have witnessed, really comes down to the speed at which you can implement things and try things. Even if you implement and try, quote unquote, the wrong thing, that wrong thing is going to get you to the next thing until you get to the right thing that's really going to help your business take off.
Yeah, and I guess, and whether you push through and do that in a short time and fail and fail and fail and succeed, or whether you're stretching out those events and learning over a long time, the outcome is the same, but the timeline is totally different.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Of course, if we're wanting a viable business, we don't want that timeline to be 5 years if we can make it profitable before then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I know that your niche is in launches, in online internet or email launches. Now, many of us are new to that concept and new to the idea. I wonder if you can describe what an email launch is and what's its purpose and what does it end up resulting.
Okay, so specifically, I work with, my students are launching online courses. So they're taking their expertise and they're doing things like, you know, it doesn't have to be like a big course that you create. For some people, it's just a paid workshop. For others, it could be like a full-blown course. For others, it could be a live like group program. So that's what my students are doing. Some of them are service providers that are transitioning or trying to leverage, or wanting to leverage rather, what they're doing so they can reach more people, impact more people, and of course, scale their revenue without working too many more hours. So those are the people that I serve, and what I teach is like, they learn the online course process, and then I teach them how to sell that online course using email.
Right. And then that's where those basic concepts we were talking about earlier around understanding who we're talking to, making our message really clear and communicating that.
Yeah.
You know, I suppose a launch, you know, when we think of the word launch, we think of a one-time, you know, a rocket launch, for example. But in terms of the emails, you talk about the idea that you send quite a few of them, and that some of them will be read by everyone, a few will be read by some, and you know, you're not hitting the mark on all of them, and the goal is not to hit the mark on all of them. The goal is to consistently share your message in ways that resonate with a variety of people over time.
Yeah.
When you think about a launch, I guess it, you know, it can be a sustained effort too, I suppose, in terms of mailing out things over time.
Yeah. So let's just bring it back to what we can actually do with emails, whether you're selling an online course or not. Like, email is just a really great place to keep your database of customers and stay connected with them. And you don't have to do write a stack of 50 emails at all. If you want to benefit from this tool, all you have to do is keep that list and show up each week and send them something. Like, particularly for service providers, like when you really want your customers to keep coming back, right? You don't want to have to keep winning new customers. You want to remind people that they worked with you and that they should come back. And email is such a great place to do that. You just have to show up each week, share a story, say what you're doing. It could be a client story. It could be your own story. You just want to remind them like, hey, I'm here. I exist. Remember you worked with me? those that are willing to go through that effort to do that, which takes like half an hour every week, those are the people whose practice will be booked out 12 months from now.
Well, I like that perspective of 12 months from now, because even though I'm not someone who I don't tend towards instant gratification, but I do tend to get, or have started to get, rather impatient with the building of my business. And that idea that it's like putting irons in the fire, that you're making those connections and you're not quite sure when those connections will result in actually someone reaching out to hire you. But the connection is there, and you're maintaining it, and you're, stoking the fire to keep that connection going.
Yeah. So what served me in my business the most is that I have a rock solid commitment to consistency and playing the long game. And that's really why I love email. Email is not for people who are trying to get results right away. Like you will get some, but like to really truly see the impact in your business, you have to consistently grow that email list, and you have to consistently email them. And yeah, it'll probably take a year, but in a year, your business will be completely transformed.
That's really reassuring and exciting to hear that, Tarzan. And it also brings up a point of something that you've talked about a lot in terms of connecting with people on a personal and authentic level. And I know that that's something that you really value, and that sets you apart from the kind of autopilot connections that we tend to think of or have actually experienced in our inboxes. So maybe you could speak a bit to that idea of being authentic and real and approachable, even though it's through email.
Yeah, so you might think that something is lost, but my emails are really authentic, real, vulnerable. I share, like, I don't gloss over anything. I just share the real stuff. So as an example, I sent an email. Oh, and by the way, like I send plain text emails. They look like an email to a friend. They don't have, like once in a while I throw in a picture, but it's not fancy graphics. Like they're very simple. And that's part of my strategy is like, I want you to feel like it's your friend Tarzan getting an email from me. And also I want you to know that there's a real person on the other end of this. I'm not just sharing glossy stories. I do share like failures from the moment that I am in that failure, and also from the other side of it. Both are important. But just like as an example, I was at a conference this weekend, and I ended up, this was like a total miracle. I had a lunch with these 3 like real serious influencers, very heavy hitters in the industry, people that in this online course industry are super duper well known. So I could have emailed my list and been like, look at me, I'm hanging with these famous people. How awesome am I? But actually in the email, it's like, you know what? I snuck into the bathroom to text my friend and be like, oh my God, I'm having lunch with Jeff Walker right now. I'm going to pee my pants. Like they love that it's like, I'm just being real. I'm not trying to sound like I'm trying to be me. And when you show up fully and authentically yourself, that's when people really connect with you. That's when they get to trust you. And that's when they're going to want to buy from you.
Well, I think that resonates really deeply with those of us in Nurture Squared, because most of us are in healing professions and heart-based professions. And that marketing word could be the second M word in terms of our concern about whether we can still be authentic and reach out in a meaningful way. Now, I know we're almost out of time. So yes. We're almost out of time, and my kiddos know we're almost out of time too. But so where can people reach you if they're wanting to find out more?
Okay, so on my website is tarzank.com. And if you go there, I have a really fun quiz. It's called What's Your 80s Pricing Persona? It's mostly for service providers, and it's a good gauge of like where you're at in your pricing and how to possibly get to the next tier.
I definitely came out as Danielson, not as David Bowie. So I'm going to have to work on my David Bowie a little bit.
I love it.
Tarzan, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your time. Bye now.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too.